Aloha and welcome to the Kauai County Council Candidates Forum. The focus of this forum is the climate crisis happening now and how our action or inaction will determine what kind of world our children and grandchildren will live in. I do for you this Oli Aloha no Kauai that was written by Makanagarma, who was born and raised on the west side of Kauai in the little plantation town of Pakala. After graduating from Waimea High School and the University of Hawaii, he went on to work for Kamehameha Schools, and in that capacity, he has returned home often from Oahu to work with educators here. He wrote this chant for us to teach our children and to share with all of you. Ea e kalama kahikina, kahiki mai aloha kupunae, ku kahali ai kali awai kini, waiale hale molale, eia e na puale mo kihana, kamawai lualani ua vehie, e vehi ke ia aloha e, aloha ku one hana ue. Aloha no, aloha e, mano kalani po, aloha e. Aloha no, aloha e, mano kalani po, aloha e. There will be 3 rounds of questions preceded by an informed presentation on the topic of climate change. Why climate change is the crisis of our time, identifying the impacts to Kauai, and using the general plan and zero waste energy strategy as working documents. Every candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each of the 3 questions. Candidates were provided these questions in advance, and they will be given an indicator after 90 seconds, and their mics will be muted at the end of the 2 minutes. In addition, each candidate will have 1 unique question, in most cases related to a previous statement he or she has made or action taken. They have not seen these questions before tonight. The closing statement will be an opportunity for each candidate to talk briefly about the steps he or she has taken personally to reduce their own carbon footprint. I introduce the first presenter, Andrea Noelani Brower. Andrea Brower is a scholar, activist, and mom from Kauai. She has a PhD in environmental sociology and teaches at Gonzaga University in Washington. Aloha, Andrea.
Mahalo, Sabra. Aloha, good evening, everyone. We are going to get started with a short overview of the basics of climate change, climate justice, and the role of local island movements and local county policy, and then move into our first round of questions. First, basic on climate change. The planet is heating rapidly. The past decade was the hottest on record, and this summer was the hottest ever in the Northern Hemisphere. It reached 100 degrees in the Arctic. Greenland's ice sheet is melting so fast that it's past the point of no return. The global temperature is changing 50 times faster than it does when it comes out of an ice age. Second basic, this heating is caused by humans. Certain gases trap heat in the atmosphere. It was actually predicted over a century ago that by burning fossil fuels, which emits carbon dioxide, we would basically be putting blankets around the earth. Industrial agriculture is also a major contributor to potent greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide, and destroys organic matter in the soil, which releases huge amounts of carbon dioxide. Some estimates put the agricultural sector at around half of all greenhouse gas emissions. However, climate change is not caused equally by all humans. Humans are not innately a parasitic force on this earth. We have plenty of examples from our present and past, including, of course, from these islands, of people living in ways that are ecologically regenerative and sustaining over the long term. Climate change is caused by particular ways of producing and consuming that are driven by particular kinds of systems, and powerful entrenched interests that have actively sought to keep things the way they are. Because our economic system, the ways we produce and distribute goods, is both highly unsustainable and radically unequal, the richest 10% of people are responsible for half of the world's carbon emissions, while the poorest half, 3.5 billion people, contribute just 10%. U.S. aggregate historical emissions are over 1/5 the entire global total, even though we have less than 5% of the population. This far eclipses every other country. The U.S. has also been the single greatest obstacle to global climate action for decades, so the U.S. has a distinct responsibility to change things. The fourth basic of climate change is that we are already seeing its deadly results, and things could rapidly get much, much worse. Extreme floods, fires, droughts, storms, sea level rise, habitat loss, ocean acidification. Last week, I couldn't step outside of my house for 7 consecutive days because the air on the West Coast was the most polluted in the world due to climate-fueled wildfires. The West Coast fires have burned over 5 million acres and at least 35 people have been killed. Smoke clouds are traveling all the way to Europe and having devastating health impacts. Meanwhile, the other coast has been hit by catastrophic flooding and a record-shattering hurricane season. Climate change is already destroying livelihoods, displacing and killing people. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change recently concluded that keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees would be our best chance of avoiding planetary-wide catastrophic unraveling. We are already at about 1.2 degrees of warming. Every fraction of a degree that we increase from here will matter significantly. The difference between warming of just 1.5 and 2 degrees could be the difference between major climate catastrophe, death, and social upheaval. While even 2 degrees of warming would be very dangerous, we are on a path to warming the world by 3 to 5 degrees by the end of the century if we maintain on the current trajectory. According to scientists, keeping the warming below 1.5 degrees will require cutting global emissions by nearly half in just 10 years and getting to net zero carbon by 2050. We also need to draw carbon out of the atmosphere by planting billions of trees and restoring carbon to the soil through regenerative farming, practices like cover cropping, crop rotation, composting, and cultivating biodiversity. We have the solutions to move in the correct directions, but as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated, it will take rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented change in all aspects of society. So perhaps the most important thing to understand about climate change is that everything needs to change, not just in technologies, but in policies and entire systems. Changes that could have very positive repercussions in terms of building a more equal and humane world. Because if we address climate change at its roots, then we will also be confronting the roots of intertwined social and economic injustices. A society that meets human and ecological needs rather than the profit desires of the already wealthy could be our global future. Starting with actions like creating millions of living wage jobs to make the transition away from fossil fuels, democratizing energy production and ownership, moving away from extractive industries while expanding the low carbon care economy, things like education and healthcare, majorly expanding public transportation and public housing that is highly efficient, and pulling carbon out of the atmosphere by rebuilding the soil and rebuilding agricultural communities. While much of this needs to happen at global and national levels, what we do right here on Kauai can lead in and model these kinds of possibilities. It can work synergistically with national and international actions, can prepare our community for climate changes that are already happening, and perhaps most important, can feed into wider movements for change. On our own island, tourism is highly carbon intensive and vulnerable to climate disruption. Like the plantation monoeconomy before it, it is a model of corporate tourism that sucks wealth out of the islands and fosters inequality. While local agriculture can, and some does, pull carbon out of the atmosphere through regenerative practices, much is still in the industrial plantation model and contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. We need to dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, commercial, and residential energy use, and do so in a way that puts equity concerns at the forefront. And finally, we need to address the fact that we import and consume vast amounts of goods that are highly resource intensive, contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions and our solid waste problem. We need far-reaching changes in all of these areas. changes that will take significant policy action and require considerable leadership and vision from our local government. Our window for action is small, and now is the time for bold ideas and action. So to open, we would like to hear from each of you. What bold ideas and legislative action do you propose for moving us towards a decarbonized, more equitable island society guided by the core value of Aloha Aina? While this is a broad and open-ended question, we encourage you to focus on one or two primary specific areas you intend to or already are championing. And we're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with you, Jade Waialeale Batad.
I'm unmuted. Okay. So, aloha, I'm Jade Waialeale Batad, and thank you very much for having us and giving us the opportunity to participate in this forum. Am I unmuted? Okay. So nobody loves statistics, but you can't manage what you don't measure. And I would propose an aggressive program to understand our community's contributions to the climate crisis. We already have some data, but it could be more readily available in a dashboard that is frequently updated and upkept. It should include updates to our progress toward climate goals. There's a lot of work being done in our responding to issues like sea level rise and reduced rainfall and warmer flooding and hurricanes, but we need to also understand how our island is responding to the causes of the problem. That is our responsibility. It is our kuleana. At the county level, we are making some advances. We have added electric vehicles to our county fleet. Our street lights are more efficient than they used to be. Our electric cooperative, KIUC, is making really amazing strides in renewable energy. But before this pandemic and probably after it, we know that the massive role of air transportation in our economy did and will continue.
3 seconds remaining.
Responsible for high greenhouse gas production. Without a short-term solution to fossil fuels in aircraft operation, are we really doing enough to reduce our carbon footprint? In other areas to balance that? I don't know. We can't answer that question unless we fully understand the carbon footprint of our food, our local ground transportation, our homes, our businesses, and our utilities. We have done some of this work. There are many studies. Our 2015 county greenhouse.
Sorry, Jade, I believe that it's just ending after. Apologies, you're the first person to have to experience that. Thank you for that very, very thorough answer. We're going to just move through the candidates alphabetically. So Addison Bulasan, same question to you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
We're good. Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm Addison Bulasan, your Kauai County Council candidate. I would appreciate one of your votes, and here's why: because the climate crisis is near and dear to my heart. Many of my own generation, younger generation, contemplates wanting to even have a kid because we don't want to grow our kids in these kind of situations. So right now we need bold action. And I love this question because it's not like, hey, let's come up with a decent idea. It's got to be bold. It has to be right now, and we have to implement as quick as possible. And that's the thing that we don't realize. And I have friends and family in California, in Washington, my sister, my cousins, my brother, who had to go through all of that. And everyone knows we don't need more data. The thing is happening right now. And first, biggest conscious thing that we could do as a collective community is make smart choices. And so I'm glad that the closing statement is about the things that we are personally doing. But the bold ideas that I want to get to, because I know the timing is tough. The first one is implement zero waste policies in the county and across the entire community. We just got to put it in right now. I mean, the zero waste ideas is pretty straightforward, and it will contribute to addressing the climate crisis, is because waste is not just a thing that we throw away into our landfill. It is a resource, and that's something that we got to consciously understand. The second thing is, although we did electrify some vehicles, we need to electrify every single vehicle. And I know that's going to be super expensive, and that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable because it's a lot of money. But we got to put our money where our mouth is. I mean, I got to sell my Mini Cooper. My Mini Cooper shouldn't even exist. In fact, the reason why I even have it is because I got to drive all the way to Hanalei because our our transportation system is on an hour block, and if we could only increase that to a more regular state, and that's one of the things that another bold thing that we need to do. We got to increase our transportation. But the last thing, and which is pretty bold, is that we got to decentivize business practices that contribute to climate crisis. That sounds intense because I'm a business, and that is going to make it harder to do business for me, but we got to do it. We just got to do it.
Thank you, Addison. Same question to you, Bernard Carvalho.
Aloha, everybody. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah. So just for the opportunity to share my mana'o. And right off the get-go, I mean, for me, we have information. We have the Kauai Kako General Plan that has been signed. I signed it in 2018. And that plan is a footprint because it includes many opportunities for us to talk about and to initiate sustainable kinds of practices and look at the Kako plan. That to me is a big part of it. Another part that I was looking at also in addition to that was the Aina Aloha Economic Futures, because I want to focus on this question. It says Aloha Aina, and taking care of our land, our water, our oceans, and looking at we as decision makers, really incorporating the decisions based on solid data and information and making the decision that is so much needed. The Aloha Aina Economic Futures was put together by grassroots organization, and now it's already supported by HTA and of course Kamehameha schools, and in there it bridges and connects some of the things, many of the things in our Kako plan. And I also wanted to talk about which bridges right into the Kauai Nui Kuapapa program, our signage program, which actually lays out our moku system on our island: Halalea, Ko'olau, Puna, Kona, Napali, and Ni'ihau, the 6 moku on our island. And then we come down to the Ahapua'a. We have 6 areas on our island. I would like to see developing grassroots teams in each moku, a moku team representing each moku, and deciding how to manage their moku areas. The big part for me right now, I'm talking homegrown style, is river and stream maintenance. We had a terrible flood in April. River and stream maintenance to me is a big part that we need to jump on. And it's not only county government, it's community, it's nonprofits, it's business taking part in managing the rivers and streams from Mauka to Makai and assuring that the water flows. Should there be a massive flooding coming our way, which will be someday again, we have the opportunity to really now to take action, look at our water systems, and really initiate, because this is what is happening for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernard. Mason Chalk, same question to you.
Hello, Mike Kako. Thank you to the Kauai Community Coalition for having this candidate forum. Today, the Kauai County Council passed the resolution identifying the Aina Aloha economic futures as a partner with the Kauai County. With a crossover of our CURSE recommendations, we identified specifically 2 areas, one in tourism and the other in agriculture, as potential areas that we might continue to collaborate on. This, I think, can lead us towards guiding legislation and defining what regenerative and circular economies should look like for Kauai. And so it is a good first step for us, one of many. But really what we need to do is, because we're already doing it, is expand on our current efforts. We are the center of the universe for kalo production. We need more of it. We are the center of the universe, just being Hawaii, as being able to establish fisheries, our local IA systems. These are all areas that we know inherent, it's built in with us, that we need to reinvest in and regenerate. And so those things are before us. What we can do out of those is create our own jobs and our own futures. And that is what we need to be investing in on the educational forefront. So how do we transition that, taking the best of technology and our ancient practices in order to establish who we are, more defined and living up to our values? That is what I'm looking for. but we can do even more bolder steps. You know, the Kauai County went into file a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical industry. We can do the same and join the rest of the counties to file suit against the fossil fuel companies. These are bold steps, all right? Along with retreat, manage retreat, we have to define where we can build, where we can grow in the future. Our landfill, another big area. We need bans on certain items that no longer should exist in our landfill, and that will force us to behave where we're not behaving correctly. And those are bold steps. They might be hurtful. They might cause some headache, but I think our future deserves it.
Muted.
Thank you very much, Mason. Felicia Cowan, same question to you.
I am so excited about what we have learned in this COVID-19 shutdown time. It's taught us what is possible. All these things that we could never do, we were told we could never do, well, we've been doing them. The stopping of so much travel, of air flights, shipping, driving. As we come out of this threat from the virus, I think that we have the opportunity to hold on to as many of our good habits that we've learned as possible. It's up to all of us to limit ourselves. I think as we've been talking about the Aloha Aina economic futures that was so exciting to pass today, it's also about socially just society. Something I've been pushing for is to be looking at social enterprise opportunities for how we house people. Instead of having our house lists, if we help to create social enterprise where people can live together and work, like an idea, this is just an example, is using things like bamboo and hemp where we can be growing that in some of our less used fields now, both bioremediates those fields, and then we can be building construction supplies like drywall and bricks and different elements like that. The more every place on the planet starts to localize, the better off we will all be. We want to be resilient. And that's something that I think that we could definitely do. Okay, a clean, green, and safe general reopening of tourism, I think is important, that as we do it, we are guiding people to come in for longer periods of time with less impact and more, oops, hit my, I canceled myself out right there. I hope I stopped that. So anyway, that would be it. We could do a lot of ideas like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Mike Danduran, same question to you.
Myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Danduran, County Council. I appreciate being here today. You know, the question was about bold ideas and legislative actions. First of all, I want to say kudos to KIUC, achieving over 50% of renewable resources, amazing. And we're leading the pack, and I just keep it going. We're very proud of that. So some of the bold ideas that I want to put together, and I'm not a politician, but I think that we need to end single-use plastics and non-compostables on Kauai. It shouldn't be on island anymore. I walk the beaches and I pick up little bits of plastic, and what I'm thinking is, you know, our kids, they're going to think that this is normal, that the beach has always been like this, where there's been plastic on the beaches. And so, you know, we need to stop just letting the plastics on. We need to stop the non-recycled plastics from our big box stores that come in or charge them a fee. This stuff here, like I said last night, it's not recyclable. It has been recycled somewhere else, and then now we're dealing with it, and it's going into our landfill. I say we need to limit the use of and the amount of rent-a-cars on Kauai, and I know there's got to be a way. I think that we should support more electric car charging stations on the island, and we should be providing it for free, so that's an incentive. I think we need to move our county towards more electric vehicles and more equipment when the technology and the recyclability of the lithium batteries makes sense. I think that we should incentivize green buildings so that when we start building, if we put new buildings or remodel old ones, that they are built so that they are more efficient and environmentally sound. I think we should provide tax credits for people that put in solar and photovoltaic. And I know that we already do, but we need to provide more. People that drive electric cars, people that get off of cesspools. We need to get them off of the cesspools. They're polluting our water and our land. We need to One of the bold ideas, finally, if I still have time, is I think we need to decarbonize what, let me just move on. My bold idea, since we don't have time, is to stand by one of our previous intentions to build a materials recovery facility and initiate a curbside recycling. We couldn't have curbside recycling without this material.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sorry, people are being automatically cut off to keep it fair. Billy DeCosta, same question to you.
Hey, I'm going to reiterate for Mike. I'll follow up with that one, Mike. I got you back on that. Recyclables, we need to get some composting going on. Zero waste with plant and animal matter at our landfills. Those can be put into soil, organic matter with microbes back into the soil for our farmers. We can do small community farming, and this can hold carbon dioxide. Do you know the ocean and our soils are the largest basin to hold carbon dioxide? I took an environmental economics class back at Humboldt State in 1988, where I graduated, when they were cutting down logs. Logs hold carbon dioxide. When we burn logs to make green energy, as we do in the plant that we have out there in Halfway Bridge, we're cutting down a process that stores carbon dioxide using large diesel vehicles to harvest these trees. We want to talk green energy. We want to talk sustainability. We want to talk zero emissions into the carbon atmosphere. We got to hold all of ourselves accountable. I see the big bold idea is going back to agricultural farming communities where we have small farmers using plant and animal matter that is decomposed out of our landfills, and we can grow our own food on small home communities that we're living. You go to Costco now and you buy the grapes that might hold a plastic container. Not only grapes, we got apples, we got oranges, we got avocados, tomatoes, they all come in those plastics. We had banned styrofoam, but yet we still got the plastics coming in. I'm going to wake you guys up with one bold thing that's going to happen in the future. How about a water shortage across the world? It's happening now. And if we don't watch out, that water shortage in the United States and across the world will affect us with shipping costs. We got to grow our own food and become more sustainable. I'm Billy DeCosta. Those are my solutions.
Thank you, Billy. Luke Evslin, same question to you.
Text Rebecca. Oh, I'll wait for this one to see what it says.
Sorry, I heard somebody else's voice there. I'll just dive in kind of from a 40,000 foot overview, which helps guide my own decision making, and then dive into some of the details and the other questions. You know, it's clear we need to fully decarbonize by 2045. There's no scientific debate on that front. But we're also facing the worst economic crisis of our times, right? And we need to make sure that the solutions to one don't negatively impact the other, right? We're not going to solve our economic crisis by making our climate crisis worse. We don't want to solve our climate crisis by making our economic crisis worse, right? And good thing is that we kind of have a blueprint on how to move forward here, and that the best economic lesson of the 20th century is that what ended the Great Depression was World War II, right? It was government and private sector getting together for this total overhaul of the American economy, you know, this mobilization towards the war effort. In 2 years, we industrialized our economy. We defeated Nazi Germany. We came out of it as the economic and industrial powerhouse of the world, and we're largely living on that success till today. Right? We need the same thing to happen for full decarbonization, right? That's a war scale mobilization to decarbonize our economy at a national level. Right? And what we know about renewable energy is that it's much more labor intensive than fossil fuels, right? Per unit of energy, 4 or 5 times as many jobs created, but the energy comes for free from the sun, right? And that's in the manufacture, the distribution, the installation, the maintenance of the panels. So by, you know, fully decarbonizing, we can create, a study came out literally 3 weeks ago showing 25 million jobs, which is the same number of jobs we actually created during World War II in the effort to decarbonize. And the other thing we need to do is full electrification of our you know, of our economy. That's electric vehicles, electric appliances, electric heating for homes. And with electrification, it's more efficient in the long run. So we can achieve 3 things: lots and lots of jobs. These are also local jobs, full decarbonization, and more efficiency means lower cost for users in the end run. I'll dive into some more local examples in my other answers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Luke. Richard Fukushima, same question to you.
Decarbonize and equitable. Decarbonize, remove carbon and carbonaceous deposits from an engine or other metal object. Heavy transport stubbornly refuse to decarbonize because the technology just isn't there. Aina Aloha Economic Futures is a native Hawaiian group who came together organically regarding the need to have native Hawaiian voices and values, experience influence the economic recovery for our Aina Aloha. Every crisis opens a course to opportunity. The COVID-19 pandemic will leave a saga of sorrow, loss, and frustrations with an equal and overwhelming amount of sacrifice, heroism, and victory. It is a turning point and time for change for all of us who call Hawaii home. Guiding principles. Aina Aloha employs strategies for economic development. Hopuali, the leaders, understand that the privilege to lead is directly dependent on those who serve. Imi o oe kela. We are driven by creativity and innovations, constantly challenging the status quo. Ho'okipa, we are inclusive and embrace the collective that is our kuleana to control and manage our resource in a way that allows us to fulfill our roles as hosts here in the Aina Aloha. Future directives. These principles will calibrate our course not only to recovery, but rediscovery our potential as a unique people and place. There is nowhere else we could or would choose to be. We are committed to this kuleana, Aina Aloha, and ensuring the sustainability of this place and those who choose to make it home. Bold idea. I would like to propose that we unite with Aina Aloha Group and Waipa Foundation and other groups of Kauai that are working with the land to rebuild Kauai and support their ideas for future to a more decarbonized and equitable island society. I would suggest funding these groups and looking forward to sustainability on Kauai.
Thank you, Richard. We apologize. Your time is up. Ed Justice, same question to you.
Hi there. My name is Ed Justice. Basically, my proposal is that as a county, we should recognize agriculture as critical infrastructure. And the reason why is because we're seeing with COVID-19 what happens when we get our supply chains interrupted. To me, it's really important that on our island that we can grow enough food to feed not only everybody here, but we could also be able to export that to other islands. And to me, I think the idea of growing enough food to feed every family here on the island, that fits in with the traditional Hawaiian culture of having the sustainable agriculture that made sure everyone who's a resident, who's part of the community, has access to food, right? So to me, agriculture is kind of it's our golden resource, and we can definitely promote it through, like I said, recognizing through critical infrastructure. And what that does is that allows public safety funds to also be used to help support farmers who are already engaged in active agriculture. And what it would also do is encourage a lot of the folks who have vacant ag land to begin to make that transition to active ag land. And we can also provide tax incentives to make that happen too, with property tax adjustment. The other cool thing about agriculture is that if we're growing crops, that's going to pull a lot more CO2 out of the air as compared to the guinea grass that's growing everywhere. So for instance, as compared to guinea grass, let's just take corn, for example. 1 acre of corn pulls 8 tons of carbon out of the air in one growing season. That's not just like a whole year, that's a growing season. So to me, there's lots of crops and lots of different materials that we can grow. Like there's certain lumbers that we can plant that have a really strong ability to pull a lot of carbon out. And then we can also grow things like hemp and other things that help to basically, not only do they remediate the soil, but it also helps the climate. So we're not only feeding ourselves, but we're helping the climate at the same time. So to me, that's my bold proposal. And also agriculture helps create a lot more jobs, opens up more economic sectors, especially for small businesses that create value-added products. I think that's the golden way to go. I think it'll help everybody. Again, my name is Ed Justice.
Thank you, Ed. Errol Kaneshiro, same question to you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Errol Kaneshiro, and first and foremost, we need to give a lot of credit to our electric utility. KIUC has pushed the envelope nationally in bringing our island community into the renewable energy forefront. Currently, KIUC has a total of 119.8 megawatts of renewable energy, with an additional 38 megawatts in the works, and have actually achieved 90 to 100% renewable energy generation during midday and on sunny days. Renewable energy accounts for more than 50% of our energy needs and has allowed us to avoid bringing in 12.7 million gallons of diesel. So as for me, I'll continue to support KIUC in their continued efforts to move us into 100% renewable energy production. Beyond our community electrical grid, in order to further decarbonize Kauai, we need to look at how our transportation system can reduce vehicle miles traveled, other known as VMT. We also have to be honest with ourselves. Kauai is not going to get rid of vehicles. Cars are and will remain our primary mode of transportation. However, how we design our towns and accommodate our future growth can reduce our vehicle miles traveled and thereby our carbon emissions. The question is, do we continue to allow urbanization of ag lands requiring further and lengthier drive times, or do we focus on infill development, which puts people in closer proximity to their jobs and urban destinations like schools and restaurants?
30 seconds remaining.
We need to pursue further infill and urbanization strategies. Bill 2744, introduced by Councilmember Kuali'i and I with the County Housing Director, and currently being heard now at Council, attempts to do just that. Talk about a big and bold idea. We received a ton of criticism on the onset, primarily due to misinformation, but this bill will be one of the main tools to accomplish infill development, promoting more housing in our town core area to accommodate our growth, pressure for urban sprawl.
Thank you, Errol. Kipukai Kuali'i, same question to you.
Yeah, aloha. Mahalo to everyone who organized the forum tonight. I too am excited about what the council has taken action on recently. I introduced the Aina Aloha Economic Futures Initiative, and I say mahalo also to Councilmember Chalk for agreeing to co-introduce that with me. And I thank Councilmember Chalk also for asking me to co-introduce the polystyrene ban bill. The mayor just signed that into law not a few days ago or a week ago. And I was proud to support that as well. As far as a bold idea, thanks to a lot of the materials that you guys shared with us, I read about something called carbon farming. And so I would like to look into supporting that. Kauai is the Garden Island. We have food security issues. We know that we have to expand our growing our food. So as we do that, let's build a new kind of farming where we're paying attention to climate change as well. So what is carbon farming? Carbon farming is a broad set of agricultural practices across a variety of farm types that result in increased storage of atmospheric carbon in the soil. Many of these practices are common in organic farming, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, and other approaches to food production. When plants photosynthesize, they remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it. And when they die, carbon is either released back into the atmosphere or it's stored for long periods of time. So let's support with planning, with Office of Economic Development. Let's find ways to support our farmers, grow our farmers, do carbon farming so that we can do better for our environment. Mahalo nui loa.
Thank you very much, Kipukai. And Wally Nishimura, you are our final candidate.
Oh, aloha. My primary goal if elected would be the recovery of Kauai's economy. To get our people back to work and on their feet, to reestablish trust in government so people know that we serve them. The losses in revenue will impact operations, potentially leading to furloughs and pay cuts. Any furloughs or pay cuts affecting our county employees will start with me. If elected and we have to go through that, I will take a 100% pay cut. I'm not running for a paycheck. I'm running for my children and the next generation. As we see incredible advancements in technology, renewable technology, and we get back on our feet, I envision a county government where electricity is provided 100% by solar. County vehicles will be electric and run off that solar. As technology improves, we can make sure it's affordable for everybody to have. Because there's a lot of people right now who are counting pennies. There's people right now who's hungry. And the solutions, they're not even thinking about purchasing solar. If we look at what we have for wind farms in Honolulu and Oahu, it's an eyesore. They don't produce what they're supposed to. But as technology improves, I'm sure it will. I like hydrogen power as well to generate electricity to use our rivers. That also has unintended consequences with the life below the river.
30 seconds remaining.
On a bigger scale, I like to see with federal assistance us utilizing the power of the ocean to create energy as well. I am a native Hawaiian. I care about my home, the land I was raised on, the land my ancestors used to walk, hunt, fish, fight, and live on, the land I am raising my children on. We must be rooted in reality when making changes on Kauai to ensure these changes don't force local people to move away to the mainland. We must take care of each other so we can take care of our home.
Thank you very much, Wally, and thank you all candidates for your thoughtful answers and for participating tonight. We're now going to move into targeted questions. In each round, just 4 candidates will be given targeted questions. Our first question in this round is for Billy DaCosta. Billy DaCosta, what policies will you initiate to support and incentivize local, regenerative, climate-friendly agriculture and ranching?
I would like to see a deregulation in farm housing on farm lease lands and farm ownership lands. And I'm not talking about a gentleman's ranch that we let happen a couple of decades ago on the north shore of the island. I want to see farmers on properties in plantation-style homes that are built from our building and construction program that we are intertwined with the county and the state. And we build these prefab farming homes on the property so farmers can live and work on the property. They can even get a 9-to-5 job and come back to the property. We have eco-friendly infrastructure today. We have off-the-grid, we have tertiary septic systems that put out portable water that can be used in their gardens, composting, organic matter, putting microbes back into the soil, taking animal and plant matter, which holds carbon, and putting it back into the soil through what we call sequestration. Sequestration is a process where you put carbon dioxide back in a soil. The soil becomes the big bank, the holding tub for our CO2. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Because you left a little time in your 2 minutes, can I ask you this follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Currently, the county subsidizes and supports the tourism industry with public monies in a variety of ways. Would you be willing to channel some of the public monies away from tourism and towards support for climate-friendly local agriculture?
I think we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. How about we bring tourists to our farms, have them stay in our small plantation dwellings for 2 nights and 3 days, and have them contribute to the farm, have them learn how to pick their own food, farm to table, work in the farm, plant the food with the local people, and have an experience, sustainable experience, and we can charge them for that. How's that?
Thank you very much for your answer. We'll move on to you now, Jade Waialeale Batad. What role can the county play in reducing the carbon footprint of visitors on Kauai, and what would you do as a council member to help in this effort?
I think our tourism and our economy and our carbon footprint is something that I'm really excited to learn more about. I've done a lot of studies in the last week, preparing myself for this forum and understanding more the footprint that we leave. I think we have to understand so much more about Malama'aina. We have to first take the initiative to educate ourselves. I watched TED Talks and podcasts and listened to YouTube all week long studying. I also met with Ben Sullivan from the Office of Economic Development. And what I've come to understand is when it comes to climate control or greenhouse gas mitigation, we need to first start by talking about it. If we understand that we're in a crisis, like you said we are in the video, then it's something that we should be talking about every single day. It's something that should be on the news every time we turn the news on, but it's not. And I understand that as a Christian, I have kuleana to this earth. As a mother, I have kuleana to this earth. As a grandmother, I have kuleana. We all need to do everything we can in our power right now to make a difference towards the footprint we leave on this earth. It is absolutely our kuleana. And it's going to happen by talking about it. And that's going to give us hope and a better future for our keiki and our grandchildren. And that's what we need to do. And that needs to be at the top of every conversation, needs to correlate with our economy, with our way of life, with our every part of it. Every part of it needs to.
30 seconds remaining.
You have You have 30 seconds, so a specific follow-up question to that. Would you be willing to significantly increase property taxes on hotels and resorts as a way to keep wealth that's generated by tourism on island and raise public revenues for infrastructure that tourists use, as well as things like climate change adaptation?
I don't know that we're ever going to tax our way out of some of these problems that we're in right now. And I know that we have a lot of economic issues from COVID-19, and we're going to have more of those financial problems moving forward. I think there are ways to incentivize the tourism experience, and there are definitely things that we can do that would bring money in. But I think when it comes to climate control and our financial stability right now, I don't know that taxing our way out of that is definitely the resolution.
Muted.
Thank you. And just to clarify, it was just on taxing resorts and hotels only. Addison Bulasan, the next question is to you. What would you do as a council member to support and incentivize local farmers growing for the Kauai market and using regenerative methods?
I love this question. Aloha, everyone. I'm Addison Bulasan, your Kauai County Council candidate. This is a fantastic question. I own Tasting Kauai, the food tour company. All we do is promote local businesses and local farmers. Our whole goal is to drive bigger demand towards our local farmers and our local restaurants that use local ingredients, because in order for us to solve this challenge, we need to be eating more local food. And so this question is fantastic because I'm working right now with the Office of Economic Development. I'm talking with their ag specialists and also talking with farmers directly, like our farmers in Waimea Valley, in the North Shore, in Moloa'a. I'm also partnering with Mike and the things that they're doing with the Kauai Food Hub and nonprofit. And I'm talking stories with Yoshi. And it's just not talking story like, hey, hi, I'm Addison, let's talk story. It's like, hey, what is the solution that we need to put in place? How can I leverage the county council for you to make sure that we can address our climate crisis? And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's 3 elements to this that we need to address. It's the demand side, the demand of people wanting to eat more local food so that we can address the climate crisis. So the agricultural side of things, that the farmer side of things, that the supply side of things can be economically making any sense, right? It's be crazy if we're trying to solve this problem by just getting more farmers and trying to grow more food if we're not buying the food. We got to buy the food, and that's part of the deal. We got to choose that local ingredients. Otherwise, this full circular economy just doesn't work, and we can't get to a place where we address the climate crisis because we are not supporting our agricultural lifestyle. And so a big piece of that is looking at our policies are in place, how we can enable more local nonprofits, private organizations, and really leverage our communities to solve the problems right now.
A short yes/no question to follow up on that. Using the county's authority over property taxes, would you support decreasing the tax burden on local farmers while significantly raising taxes on transnational corporate agribusiness, such as the agrochemical seed industry, which is worth billions of dollars and produces highly climate destructive technologies? So would you support decreasing the tax burden on local farmers and balancing that by raising taxes on transnational corporate agribusiness?
Oh man, that's just an unfair question. It's a yes and no. And I wish I could
give a short sentence response if you like.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm going to try to incentivize our local farmers. That's the whole deal. No, I don't want to penalize somebody because I don't know what they're doing. That's like, you got to talk to them first and come to the solution. That's like crazy. I mean, that's the deal. You got to work with everybody here, and it's not that I don't understand the economics on this. You got to work with everybody on the island. You cannot just like, hey, let's penalize you and then support only you. That's like background deals. Come on, guys.
Thank you very much. Our last question is for Ed Justice. Ed Justice, you suggested the collection of food and green waste to turn into valuable compost for gardens and farmers, part of the regenerative ag formula, which sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. How do you see this manifesting, and what other opportunities do you see for green business?
Sure. Actually, I should thank my wife for that idea, because she's the one who actually did that exact thing in the UK when she lived there. For instance, the United Kingdom, they actually had compost collection bins from every single house. And since we know that the landfill is basically 60% compostable material, we can, if we start, collecting this and diverting it away from the landfill, we can actually use that as material that can be given to the farmers who are growing foods that we can eat. That also helps reduce their cost burden, right? So I think it's a kind of a common sense thing. And in a way, I think we could actually prioritize that, even though I think there's already been a material recovery facility approved, but I'm not sure if the compost part would be a major component of that. Maybe it is. And if it is, I'm all for that. It's like a fantastic thing. What was the other part of the question?
Just how you see this manifesting and what other opportunities you see for green business.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this is where I think, again, how you can fund that comes from if you have the lower property tax rate for active ag land and you're recognizing it as critical infrastructure, you're able to use public safety funds to help support the farmers and also to go towards programs like this. Additionally, I think if you have a higher tax rate on vacant ag land for folks that are just basically refusing to make the transition from active to, or from vacant to active, the people who basically aren't contributing would be contributing from a higher tax rate. And then that money could be directly used to help fund sustainable farming, active agriculture. So it's all doable. Everything is doable. There's tons of solutions.
Thank you. A follow-up to that, also on the taxes, would you support increasing property taxes on lands that rental cars are rented out from as a way to disincentivize rental cars and raise monies for things like public infrastructure and the bus? So again, because the county has jurisdiction over property taxes, raising property taxes on lands that rental cars are on to disincentivize rental car use.
That's a really interesting question. I haven't considered it. I would definitely consider that as a possibility. The other thing I think that we will have to do at some point, and it may not be immediate, but eventually down the line it's going to be necessary, is to raise the property tax somewhat on hotel and resort. And I think, if you're going to use, let's say, the rental cars, you could tax that land the same since it's being primarily used as hotel and vacation function. The other thing too, I think, would be to also do the same thing with TVRs, is to raise the TVR rate to match that of the hotel and resort. So yeah, it's feasible.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you, candidates, all for your participation and your very thoughtful answers. To clarify, because I believe there was some misunderstanding in this last round, all of the questions on raising taxes have been about shifting the tax burden away from local residents and towards multinational companies that make much profit off of these islands as a way to also diversify the economy and decarbonize it. So we thank you all for your participation. We are now going to have a few service announcements from some of our co-sponsors, and then we will get into our second round of questions. First reminder is, of course, to vote. Your ballot must be mailed in before November 3rd in order to be counted. You still can register to vote up until October 5th in person or online. And if you haven't gotten your ballot by October 16th, contact the elections office. Second little announcement, November 8th through 14th is the Ipono Challenge, a week to celebrate local food and support the people who cultivate it. You can check out the Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action's website or social media for more information. This event is co-sponsored by the newly formed Kauai Climate Action Coalition. The coalition will be organizing a tree planting day on October 30th, part of a Hawaii-wide effort. If you'd like to help with the event, or if you're interested in joining the wider work of the coalition around educational advocacy for climate action, you can email dumpdoctor@gmail.com. Again, that's dumpdoctor@gmail.com. The email is at the bottom of the flyer. The event is also co-sponsored by the Kauai Women's Caucus. Their mission is, as bearers, nurturers, caregivers, and protectors of life, we advocate for the pursuit of justice for all. If you're interested in the work of the Kauai Women's Caucus, you can email them at kauaiwomen'scaucus@gmail.com and get on their listserv. And finally, the event is co-sponsored by the Community Coalition of Kauai, which seeks to bring people together from across the island to explore the complex issues we face today and secure a sustainable future. You can find out more about the coalition at www.communitycoalitionkauai.org or on their Facebook site. Thank you very much. We are going to move into our final round our second round of questions as well as presentation, identifying climate impacts to Kauai and planning for adaptation and resilience, facilitated by Ivory Keilani Lloyd. Ivory graduated from UH Manoa with a degree in political science and got her master's degree in sustainable development and corporate responsibility. She worked with Blue Planet Hawaii and now has her own business and has 2 sons. Thank you so much, Ivory.
Mahalo, Andrea. Aloha mai kako to everybody. Thank you for having me as moderator. Let's just share my screen. For this next portion, as I delve into just exactly how climate change will affect and impact us here directly on Kauai and what that will look like. As a mother of 2 young boys, so what will the climate impacts have on Kauai and what does that look like for us? Well, as a mother of 2 young boys, what I'm seeing and what they will witness in their lifetime is actually quite alarming. And as many of you have witnessed firsthand over the last few decades, our island is extremely vulnerable to change in circumstances, environmentally, socially, and economically. These changes will be unprecedented in the years to come, and strong leadership is needed now to tackle these issues in the present and for the future. If we look at other nations around the world, such as Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Vanuatu, these are merely warning signs that we must act quickly to create an action plan on how we will mitigate and adapt to climate change impacts. Unfortunately, they no longer have the luxury of making their decisions based on what ifs because they're living the impact of sea level rises as we speak. They're past the mitigation and now facing decisions of whether to relocate or elevate of an entire island nation. So the impact climate changes will have on Kauai won't be too far off of what they're currently seeing. It will have direct impacts on our economy, our reefs and marine life, our freshwater tables and systems, as well as our native birds and ecosystems. Our people will be displaced, our businesses will suffer, and a lot of money will be lost if nothing's done. However, Kauai is strong, and as we've seen through this pandemic and our recent floods on the North Shore, with proactive and smart planning, things can change for the better. So my question to you is the following. What planning and actions would you initiate in the next 2 years while on the council to address these effects of climate change on our island and its communities? So we're going to start off with Luke Ebslin is up first. And you'll have 2 minutes to answer.
Thank you, Ivory. Yeah, I know the question is framed as in how are we going to, adapt over the next 2 years, but I want to be clear that, we're going to be adapting to this for the rest of my political career. My daughter, her 4th birthday is tonight. She's going to be trying to figure this out for the rest of her life and likely her, her children's lives. And that's largely because we're 20 to 30 to 40 years too late here. And there's a lot of warming baked into the system and we're going to experience disastrous impacts no matter what. That said, as Andrea said in the beginning, right, every 1/10 of a degree of additional warming leads to exponentially worse impacts, right? So we're always better off focusing on reducing emissions on the front end so that we don't have to deal with the impacts on the back end. That said, we're going to deal with lots of disastrous impacts, right? There's so many impacts from wildfires between California. There was a record 5 tropical storms in the Atlantic, right? Stronger storm events, refugee crises, social and political and economic, upheaval, ocean acidification. One, I think, on Kauai that we think about a lot and that we probably have the best data on is sea level rise. The state has done a great job modeling the impacts of sea level rise. They've identified what they call SLREXA, sea level rise exposure area. This is basically a line that's drawn around every island showing the impacts of 3.2 feet of sea level rise. The problem with that line is that it's pixelated and it's not really a surveyable line. You can't go on the ground and tell a property owner, oh, build here, but don't build here because the line isn't all that clear. So I actually reached out to the state 2 years ago saying, how can we use this line at a county level? And they said, good question. We'll get back to you with an addendum to our report in 2 years. Luckily, that 2 years is up in October. They said it's actually going to come out soon. The guidance on how to use it, my anticipation is that it'll be a way to smooth out the line so that we can have a clear identifiable line. That it, likely I would anticipate calling for higher freeboard for any development within the sea level rise exposure area, possibly some solutions to reduce density in that area. And then certainly, making sure that we're not doing any county or state infrastructure within the sea level rise exposure area.
Thank you, Luke Ebslin. Next up is Richard Fukushima. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Okay, climate change. Thousands of studies conducted by researchers around the world have documented increases in temperature at Earth's surface as well as in the atmosphere and oceans. Shorelines are one of the planet's most dynamic physical features, and Hawaii is no exception. Communities along our shores have flourished for centuries in the harmony with the ebb and flow of the tides, punctuated by the occasional devastating hurricane, tsunami, and flooding. However, rapid warming of the atmosphere and oceans caused by 2 centuries of unabated carbon emissions have causing increased rate of sea level rise. Sea level rise is an inevitable outcome of global warming that will continue through many centuries, even if human-generated global greenhouse gas emissions were stopped today. Impacts of climate changes on Kauai County. Environmental degradation, extreme heat, severe weather, water and food supply impacts, degraded living conditions and social inequities, changes in vector ecology, air pollution, and increasing allergens, water quality impacts. Planning and Action Initiative Plan. Initiate proposals to study and plan action for climate change, form committees and search for volunteers to help with the research, conduct detailed hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment for critical infrastructure and lower-lying coastal communities. Action. Write proposal for plan of action to address climate changes on the island of Kauai beaches and shoreline. Submit proposal to the County Council for approval. Work with County Council members and follow through with the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Fukushima. Next up is Ed Justice. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I got the question. Thank you. So the reality is that the county, the state, the federal government, for decades, they have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on studies and plans and action plans. So, there's climate action plans, there's sea level rise plans, there's multi-hazard mitigation plans, there's resiliency plans. And so we have amazing roadmaps that have already been laid out. I mean, even at the international level too. So to me, let's utilize these. I mean, instead of trying to create something new. So maybe my action that I would propose if I was on the council is, okay, let's have a climate subcommittee on the council that can directly deal with these. And hey, let's have Luke Evslin be the chair because, he has got lots of great ideas. He knows climate inside out and backwards. And so I like a lot of his ideas, and I think he'd get a lot of support from the council too. So to me, if the council has a subcommittee on that, then great. And then we can take these plans, put them in front of all of us and go, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this. So that's what I do in the next 2 years.
Okay, quick follow-up question, thank you. Specifically, is there any initiatives or actions within those plans that you have seen that you would propose?
Well, one of the things I think would be good, that I think would be useful, is that if we ever have to reroute any highways, to make sure that we reroute them away from the coastlines and put them more inland. I think not only is it better for the shoreline, but it's also just going to be safer for folks as well. One of the things that I would like to see us do is for people who buy property that's on a coast, I think that they should have to sign some kind of like liability waiver, that they understand the risk of buying on a coastline, that the county is not going to come in and go, hey, we'll let you put in a seawall. They have to understand it's subject to sea level rise, coastal erosion, those kinds of issues. And that way, you're not stepping on people's constitutional right to buy property that happens to be there, but it's also not allowing them the ability to put up something like a seawall that could damage the coastline further.
Muted.
Thank you, Justice. Errol Kaneshiro, question, you're up next for this question.
Okay, no, thank you. For me, we need to do an assessment of all of our communities' vulnerable areas and infrastructure assets. And I mean, let's face it, so much of Kauai is vulnerable to the destructive forces of climate change. And make no mistake, climate change isn't projected to happen. It's happening right now. We've seen deterioration of our shoreline in Kapaa. where the ocean has consumed facilities and our bike and walking path. We've experienced the effects of king tides, and we're seeing extreme rain events like the flooding on the North Shore and in Koloa. We need to continue to use science as a powerful tool to guide our future policies. So much of Kauai's historical development has been around coastal and estuary areas. Yet as climate changes, sea level rise, and the frequency and intensity of storms increase, we need to accept the fact that those coastal and estuary areas are extremely vulnerable, and the further development of them is a massive liability to the industry and the county. So being cognizant of these forces and working on a systematic and realistic managed retreat for future development that is guided by sound science is in all of our best interests. I can also say that I'm a proud supporter of Kauai's existing shoreline setback ordinance, which is one of the most robust shoreline setback ordinances in the country. However, our current shoreline setback ordinance is based on historical erosion patterns. I've been in discussion with our planning department to update the ordinance to include sea level rise projection rates so that any future development on the coastline can be properly cited to ensure sea level rise are mitigated. The planning department should have an updated study within the coming year, and at which time I'll be working with the admin to introduce an ordinance to incorporate that data into it.
Okay. Thank you, Errol. Kipukai Kuali'i. Same question.
Aloha. Yes, it's true. We do have a lot of great plans out there. We had great people working for us in planning, the Office of Economic Development, and even our emergency management agency. So even our general plan from 2018 has an Appendix D that shows all the sea level rise maps. We have the West Kauai Community Plan, which we're working on today, that takes into account sea level rise data in making land use decisions. We have, is something going on? Am I being heard?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, something popped up on my screen. The multi-hazard mitigation plan update is going on now. There's a meeting tomorrow, I believe. And then I support the climate resilience and adaptation plan, which will start in 2021 and go on for 18 months. It's already funded. One thing I support is the community resilience hubs. We've heard about the Wainina Community Resilience Center, and that's basically a building that provides kind of like an evacuation center, if you will. It provides backup electricity, access to resources, food, water, ice, charging stations. I think we should try to work on those all over the island. I'm willing to step forward and help work with the West Kauai Hawaiian Homes Association for a West Side Evacuation Center that's in the Mauka lands of our Hawaiian Homelands Trust. I'm willing to work with the Anahola Hawaiian Homes Association, which I'm a member of, to update or renovate our neighborhood center as a storm shelter and evacuation center. It's also important that we protect Native Hawaiian communities and Native Hawaiian resources in looking at equity and helping the most vulnerable communities. Yeah, the county's already doing great stuff. We just need to expand upon it and do more. Mahalo.
Thank you, Kipukai. Wally Nishimura, same question.
Thank you. So I just want to touch briefly on that extra question that was asked in the last round, because that'll answer this question here. How are we going to pay for climate change measures right now? I'll tell you, I'm not going to vote for it to come off the back of local people. It's going to have to come from tourism. It's going to have to come from bigger corporations to pay a little bit more, to help understand why they have to pay a little bit more, to ensure the sustainability of their business for tourism and the longevity of their farming and maybe what they are farming. So I would support that, absolutely. And it'll pay for our infrastructure to move, because the roads need to move Mauka. And previously, traffic congestion was really a tourism issue. Get the rental cars off the road, people on shuttles. In certain areas on Kauai now, it's a climate change issue. Our roads, like across Cocoa Palms, like on the west side, like on the North Shore, we got to move north. With that, we have to move our power lines and our sewer systems away from the ocean as well. And it's urgent to take action now. You know, to solve our traffic problem in Kapaa, to get funding. Took over 20 years to get funding to add an additional southbound lane to Lihui. We cannot wait 20 years to move our infrastructure now. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. Next up is Jade Wayaleale Batad.
Aloha. I think one of the ways we can start doing this is by local food production. I think that it reduces our carbon footprint, saves us from transporting food long distances. It helps feeds us. It provides jobs. If our food is produced locally, then we know who's growing it. We know what's in it. We know how fresh it is. And I think the word agriculture means working the land. Therefore, I think our agriculture tax exemptions should go to those who are tilling the soil and raising livestock. I think also that they are the ones who produce all the items that they're farming or they're growing, and that gives us a greater understanding into the life of our land. I think also that our plantation irrigation systems expanded on concepts of developed by our ancestors to bring life-giving water to our farmland. That's Kauai Ola, that life-giving water. Without it, we can't grow kalo. We need water to grow kalo. I think I have a couple of other ideas. I think our county government should expand our farmers markets. I think we should lobby our supermarkets to carry far more locally produced produce. I think that also we should make it a priority that the food that's grown here is bought here, ends up on our table. I think there is no, I strongly feel like there's no agriculture committee on the council, and there should absolutely be one. I also think that some of the needed work now falls under our Office of Economic Development or even under planning. But if we are serious about climate change and resilience, isn't agriculture and food sustainability a key to that? I believe it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Jade.
Hello, Kako. Do you mind repeating the question, Ivory?
Sure. What planning and actions would you initiate in the next 2 years while on the council to address these effects of climate change on our island and its communities?
Fantastic. I'm Addison Bulasan, your Kauai County Council candidate. And in fact, the crazy thing about this is that first question, bold ideas and legislative actions, they weren't just bold in some ideas. They're actually actions that we can take right now. So let me bring that back real quick and talk about that and some of the things that I think I want to partner with some of the current council members. But implementing zero waste policies has to be something that we look at immediately. Some of the organizations I've been part of have already implemented inside of our events. And I believe that our county as a government can start implementing these waste policies as soon as possible. The second thing I brought up was electrifying our driving fleet, not just for the county, but hopefully all of us. I put a quick joke that somebody got to buy everybody a Tesla Model 3. That would just solve all our problems. I think I'd feel good about that. That's a joke if anyone's watching. The third thing was increasing our multimodal transportation between our town core centers. There's no way around this, guys. We gotta, like Arrow was talking about, driving is going to be and always be part of our main way of driving. But like I said, if Arrow can buy us all Tesla Model 3s, then we're all good to go. But we're looking at like our bus systems, we're looking at enabling bike lanes, enabling our ways to walk around town. That's a huge piece of it. And the other thing that I mentioned was decentralizing business practices that contribute to the climate crisis. This one's a tough one. I didn't get to dive into it, but it's, you know, as a business, that's conscious choices that we have to make. Maybe it increases 10 or 5 or 15 more cents to the bottom line of what's going on, but it's important for us to do. And last but not least, like I was saying earlier, I would love to partner up with some of the ideas that have been already shared, like what Arrow's talking about, the shoreline setback ordinance, and Kipo Kai mentioning about the resilience hubs. And I'm sure Luke's going to talk about town core centers any moment now, because that's what he's all about, and I'm too.
Thank you, Addison. Next up is Bernard Carvalho Jr.
This question, you know, it ties right into growing Kauai responsibly. And we talked about that from before, and which ties right into my experience in being involved in the Aloha Plus Challenge. You know, clean energy, local fruit production, green jobs and green opportunities there. Waste reduction is another one we're talking about, of course. Natural resource management, all of it ties in, and of course, smart growth principles. And so for clean energy, one of the things I really thanking KIUC, my experience has been the retrofitting of all of our streetlights into LED lighting. I mean, that experience has happened. Now we need to continue and do more. On the local food production, oh my God, the Aina Hokuku o Kilauea out in Kilauea, that 75 acres that the county put in, as well as working with the community, needs to continue in other parts of the community. So that wonderful opportunity to grow our own food at home. And also the setback ordinance we're talking about. I know it's aggressive, but it is 100 feet from 40, and I know there's other stuff involved, but that's a good thing. At least it's starting. Now we can kind of articulate it and make it even better. So I continue to support that. Waste reduction, reduce, reuse, recycle. We talked about numerous times. I've been involved in discussions overall on how to better manage our waste. I signed the plastic bag ban back in 2011. We tried to do our best in creating the Disneyland of waste, which is a reduce, recycle, reuse, recycle facility. So all of this educational piece is tied into the bigger picture. Also smart growth principles. I mean, transforming our island into walkable, bikeable, complete streets, safe routes to school. I mean, right down here, roundabouts, all of it, we can talk and talk, but the action has to happen. And then the follow-up. So we have the examples, we have the footprint, we have the opportunity now to follow through as decision makers, as council members, and then bridging and connecting all of these different opportunities that are already done. And how do we continue that? I know resources will take, you know.
Thank you, Bernard. Did we have the timer go off? I didn't hear it. Sorry, I think you got muted. So next up is Mason Chalk.
Aloha mai kākou. Once again, I think there's so much that can be done within the next 2 years at the County Council. And I'll try not to repeat so much of what everyone has said, because I absolutely agree with everything they've said. And so I'll try and fill in the gaps here. You know, one of the things I think makes us ready and poised to do this work in the next term is that our Office of Economic has done a really good job of preparing us for it. And so not only that, we also have experienced some significant climate change issues and emergencies in the last few years that really has given us some opportunity to move forward on it. The general plan, case in point, policy number 14, specifically says we prepare for climate change. And so how do we do that? We plan our communities accordingly, and we integrate climate change challenges into our response into it. The West Kauai Community Plan has a huge amount of focus on that and how we move forward in addressing climate change. The other areas that I see us being able to move on immediately going into the second term is looking at our building codes and update them to limit greenhouse gases. This is something that we've talked about initially, but there's so much more work to be done so that we are building and growing in the right healthy way. I'm going to move towards the watershed management. Act 35 funds are now on its way to us, to FEMA. And, you know, I've talked for years about our need to establish regional watershed management plans. We have a lot happening up Mauka in the Wauakua, but we got to talk about how it is we manage on the low levels, not only saltwater intrusion, but shoreline, impacts. So, you know, I think if we don't take a conscious effort right now, our economic viability at the county is going to be actually impacted. I mean, our credit rating is now in jeopardy. And so it behooves us to look at the kinds of funding sources that are out there because our bond rating companies are saying so. And so there are many opportunities for us to do so.
Thank you, Mason. Next up, Felicia Cowden.
Thank you. This issue is almost the main reason that I ran for office. I was motivated by the April 2018 floods. And so at the top of my list is watershed management. That's historically what our Hawaiian ancestors was their strength. And then also the plantations were very responsible for that. And so this is following, Mason started to get into this. We have these Act 35 funds. That's where the FEMA monies that were left over from the spring 18, we have 39 million that's been given to the county. And I am very excited about that opportunity for the county to get an opportunity to work on the river management, and that we can learn a way to partner with the state and to be addressing these areas locally, because the people within their own ahupua'as know best about how to handle it. And right hand in hand with that is to figure out how we're going to get a handle on the albizia overgrowth, because as I watch in different rivers around the island, when the albizias come down just around the crown of the tree, it erodes the other side of the river. We see in Hanalei that's happening right around the how. So we have to take care of our river sides, because that's where the rubber hits the road. We have, bigger than any of these other issues, is the impact of the flooding, and it's eating away at our houses. So an extension on that, which again, I have a little bit of alignment with Mason here, is the building code. Something that I've seen is that we're allowing the same type of building regardless of the land that it's built on. And so it might be great to have a concrete foundation in the Puna district in Lihue, but in a tight little ili in Wainiha, or in these very saturated hillsides, when you have the concrete foundations, you see the scouring that happens around the houses. I got in next to the foundation, taller than me, the scouring around. It tears out the driveway, it rips up the road, it hurts the downhill side.
Thank you, Felicia. You got muted. Next up is Mike Dandurand.
Hi, aloha. Could you repeat the question again? It's been a while.
Sure. What planning and actions would you initiate in the next 2 years while on the council to address these effects of climate change on our islands and its communities?
You know, listening to the councilman, and I agree, you know, this is something that it's not a surprise. We know it's coming. The water has already risen 6.6 inches in the last decade, and you know, they're expecting, according to the researchers, the water level to rise another 8 feet in the next century, in this century. And so, you know, Finley is going to need to start thinking about stuff like that, which is Luke's daughter. You know, Luke and Kipukai and Errol, you guys have, you know, done your due diligence as far as preparing. And part of it is, you know, we have to be prepared. And a lot of it is being aware of it. And so it's not like it's happening. It is happening now, but it's not instant. It's kind of like the bathtub rise, where it's slowly picking up and you kind of can get there. The fact that we are aware of it, I know that there's a lot of changes in the zoning. I know that they are talking to the people that own the properties on the ocean, especially on the west side, and telling them they can't build a house here, but they should build a house here. And so there's a lot of working in progress on that. The West Kauai Community Plan has discusses it, and so does the 2018 Kauai General Plan. So zoning, planning, being aware, you know, we're on an island nation, and we cannot overpower the ocean, but we can move out of its way. And so as long as we're updating the zoning, updating all our plans regularly, making everybody aware, that is our due diligence, and I think we're good about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Billy DeCosta. Same question.
So I don't want to reiterate what everybody else said. A lot of good ideas, a lot of places already in planning, a lot of the good ideas from all of the incumbents and the potential candidates running. The number one thing is that no matter what we do here on Kauai, we still won't have global warming. It's consequences of the rest of the world. So what I would like to see us do over the next 2 years is put some concentration into food security, farm to live dwellings where people can live and farm, and make sure that when the rest of the world crashes, and they did with this pandemic, and it's going to be a more world issue that's going to happen, we can feed our people without being 85% dependency on importing food. We don't have to bring in food in those plastic containers. We can get our recycling of plant and animal matter to soil organic matter, put it back into the soil with soil sequestration, which means putting carbon dioxide back into the soil, which is our holding table, like the ocean is. And that's the way we can combat global warming and prep Kauai to be self-sustaining with food farms that have farmers living on top, with community kitchens and portable slaughterhouses, with infrastructure that is eco-friendly. And we can make this happen. We sat down too long, ladies and gentlemen, and we pondered the ideas with statistics and things in place. We need people that can shake the stick and make things happen. I am a farmer. I know how to farm. You don't ask a surfboard person to ask a baseball player to make a surfboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. We will now move to our targeted questions portion of the forum. The candidates again have not received these questions beforehand, and they will each have 2 minutes to answer them. Mike Dandrian, what are your thoughts on how to address the predicted water problem on Kauai with saltwater inundation and interrupted rain patterns from climate impacts? And what would your action in this be as the council member?
Okay, you broke up, so I only got like
Okay, I'll repeat it. What are your thoughts on how to address the predicted water problem on Kauai with saltwater inundation and interrupted rain patterns from climate impacts? And what would your action in this be as a council member?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, I know that I don't believe that water is an issue for our island right now. We have the water. The biggest problem is getting it from where it is to down to where it needs to be in our farms. As far as saltwater inundation, I'm honestly, I don't know the information about that. I don't know if that's an issue or not, but that's something that I would definitely look into. So thank you for that.
Okay, I'll just do one follow-up question.
Okay.
As a local business owner, would you be willing to incentivize not taxing the land on as a way to for car rental uses, for example, to decentivize car rental? Did we already have this question?
You know, car rentals are right where it hurts. One of the reasons I ran is because I saw these rental cars parked in these rental cars parked in these lots. Yes, in fact, I talked to Luke about this. I said, how do we get these cars how do we control it? And he says we can't do it legally except property tax, where we can tax the location that these cars are on. But the problem is, well, then they'll move the location to another location. And but I think that's one way. And I think the most important thing is to make it inconvenient. You know, make it expensive, make it difficult for when the visitor comes to the island. There's an expectation that they get off the plane, they get their rent-a-car, and they drive to their hotel, and they really don't communicate or get connected with the island. And I would love to see a taxi cab or our shuttles pick them up, or the hotel picks them up, and then they get to kind of get a feel of the island. If they're so basically, what I'd like to do is, if it's a rental car, we need to make them pay for being on the island and using our island and using our roads. If you live here on the island and you have a rental car business, I think that's different, and we would actually treat you better, because basically, I want to support the people that live here. If you have a business and you don't live here, then I really feel like you're not really contributing to the island as much. So basically, I would support a local business that's a rental car company, but not a rental car company from that doesn't have an actual invested interest in the island.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Kipukai Kuali'i, you voted against the 0.5% excise tax that would have helped expand Kauai bus services. Expanding bus usage reduces our greenhouse gases, reduces transportation costs for users, and increases user physical activity. How important is expanding and improving county bus services for a sustainable and just society, and would you support it?
I do support the bus. I think the bus is really important, having that affordable transportation for those who maybe can't afford a car and still live far away from work. I voted against the GET increase primarily because it would hurt the poorest amongst us. It's a regressive tax. That doesn't mean I don't support the bus. Was there an answer to that question?
Were there any inefficiencies that were identified through that could have been worked on for the bus system that you would have supported had they done it differently?
Oh, of course, everybody knows about the paratransit system and how they've been working to improve that. The bus is doing much better, but they still haven't gotten all the way to where they need to go. The cost of the paratransit system right now is still really high and not efficient.
Are there any initiatives that you would like to propose that would help support kind of expanding the bus system?
I mean, at this point, you know, there's the COVID, the economic recovery we have to deal with. It's going to cost money for any kind of expansion. And I guess the bus would have to get in line because we have affordable housing. We have, you know, a lot of needs. We have even the climate change stuff you're talking about. It is critical.
Is any public transportation in part of the Aina Aloha Economic Futures program?
Yeah, I mean, it's a holistic approach to all aspects of people's lives, right? And sustainability. I mean, if we get more people out of cars and less cars on the road, right there, the emissions are lowered. So we need more people riding the bus. I accept that. That's why I support the bus.
Thank you, Kipukai.
Mahalo.
Richard Fukushima, what are your thoughts on the county running a pilot electric vehicle car share program and the county requiring EV-ready facilities for new developments?
What was that on electrical vehicles?
Yes, electric vehicle car share program and the county requiring EV electric vehicle ready facilities for new developments. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not too keen about electrical vehicles because you have to, it costs more money trying to build up stations for people to fill up their vehicles. And it's similar to golf carts where you have electric golf carts. You can go only so far and so fast. I mean, traffic-wise or accident-wise, it could be economical, you know, as far as running the vehicle. But once the vehicle breaks down, like everything you buy cheap, and the thing breaks down, you have major costs, expense in trying to repair it. So if you make it more on the disposable issue, like after 3 years, the thing, you turn it in and get a new one would be a good idea, I think.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mason Chalk. Mason Chalk, is there council action that could help bring the county into alignment with methods outlined in the general plan regarding watershed management and the Ahupua'a system?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke of it in the response to the last question. You know, the challenge that we're facing here, as I've said before, is jurisdiction on Kauai as opposed to other counties. We haven't completely taken on that role, and the state is pushing it away from its kuleana on this particular management of watershed. So what it will take is for us to, one, create watershed management plans that identify how it is we want to move forward. I do believe a huge piece of that is embedded in access and in stewardship agreements that we have been really keen on being able to establish. We need the community to know and be part of that process to identify the key areas of hazard mitigation and then be able to access that so that they can maintain it, because the truth is, as we all know, we don't have the resources at the county level to be able to provide those services. So we need to take care of ourselves in this case, but we certainly should have a management plan that will allow and maybe even streamline the process of the Army Corps in order to get permitting and machinery even where necessary, where high hazard areas exist. And so I think that this Act 35 funding will be the first step in that. I'd like to actually bring the consultants here and not do it for us, but teach us how to do it to create the right kind of plan and do it for each watershed that we have on the island so that we can be more in charge of our future as it relates to watersheds.
Great. Thank you, Mason. Next, we have Errol Kaneshiro. In 2017, Kauai County was offered a $100,000 grant to create a climate action plan. You voted against accepting the monies and you didn't get it. Do you have a better understanding as to why we need a climate action plan? And if so, what should that plan include? And then maybe do you have any new revenue sources that you might look for funding planning and action in the future?
Yeah, at that time, we actually went through a few votes on that climate action plan. The climate action plan was in the budget, I think at the time when our budget was pretty tight, where the county had about $30,000 in it. And, a lot of times we get accused of just being a rubber stamp on things. And in particular on that climate action plan item, we asked just simple questions, what is a climate action plan? What are the tangibles? And at the time of the budget, our budget is like a real short time period where we can ask questions. We didn't get the answers back that we wanted to feel comfortable that the amount of money we were going to be putting in is a set amount and what we're going to get out of this plan. There was possible additional resources we need to pay over the next few years. The climate action plan came up again a few years, I think like 6 months later, where it was all through grants. And again, we asked those same questions that we asked in the budget. What is the climate action plan? What are the tangibles? And again, we got these roundabout answers that didn't really answer like what we're getting. They said, it's going to be a collaboration with people and the UH and stuff. And, finally, when we did get answers, we got a full list to all of our answers. And we had a council meeting and everyone was ready to vote on it. Unfortunately, they came to council and said, oh, the timing on this has lapsed. For me, I think I'd be comfortable if a climate action plan came up again and, in that case, we're actually getting free money that was going to be matched by a few communities, nonprofits in the community. We had all of the answers. We had what the climate action plan was going to do, what the tangibles were. We had a very clear picture of what it was going to do. And at that point, I was comfortable in voting for it. But unfortunately, the time lapsed and we had to receive it. But I mean, if the opportunity came up again, I still have my notes from that meeting. I have all the answers that we asked at that time. And I'm a lot more comfortable on that climate action plan. And if the process is going to be the same as that one, I'm more than comfortable moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Errol. Thank you to all the candidates for your thoughtful answers. And so before we move on to our next portion, we just want to say thank you to some of our sponsors and to for all of you that are listening right now and live streaming. If you'd like to check out and learn a little bit more about the political process, you can check out the Kuleana Academy, School of Political Leaders. The deadline to apply is September 30th. And mahalo to Hoike Kauai, who's streaming us live. And mahalo to our sponsor, Surf Rider Foundation. And for any additional information, if you guys want to take a quick screenshot of this, this is some things that you can reference, but you can also find it on the website on communitycoalitionkauai.org. Thank you. And now we'll move to our next portion of our panel. Our next moderators are Jimmy Trujillo and Alana Lesor. Jimmy Trujillo has been an advocate for Kauai's youth since 1999 and is currently teaching Construction Academy students at Kapa'a High School through a partnership with Kauai Community College. He's the chair of the Kauai Beekeepers Association and serves on the executive committee of Zero Waste Kauai. You may know him from the Community Affairs radio show on KKCR-FM. Alana Lesor is a marketing professional and activist on Kauai. She is an active member of Zero Waste Kauai and also hosts a weekly community affairs program on KKCR, Kauai Community Radio.
All right, aloha everybody. I'm going to present to you all a little bit more about the 2018 General Plan as well as some zero waste strategies that we can be implementing to combat climate change. All right. So the general plan of 2018 is based on the following vision for Kauai's future: that Kauai will be a sustainable island, a unique and beautiful place, a healthy and resilient people, and an equitable place with opportunity for all. Developed over a 4-year process with much community input, the plan sets policies to help guide land use, growth, development, planning, and action. It was approved by the Kauai County Council in 2018, and the general plan states, doing our part to reduce carbon emissions from buildings, transportation, and other sources is our kuleana as global citizens. And you can read the full plan at plankauai.com. So 19 policies were identified in areas that will be affected by climate change. Some are connected to the ways we can reduce our greenhouse gases, and others are deal with how we'll prepare for the impacts, such as designing healthy and complete neighborhoods, building a balanced multimodal transportation system, completing Kauai's shift to clean energy, making strategic infrastructure investments, protecting our watersheds, and indirectly but still important, respecting and honoring Native Hawaiian rights and nurturing our keiki and kupuna. The 2018 General Plan calls for a climate plan and accelerated zero waste strategies. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with zero waste, it is a solution to a warming planet, and here's the definition. Zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. Seems reasonable, right? So next, my colleague Jimmy will go a little bit more into detail.
Zero waste strategies can move us away from a linear economy based on resource extraction, consumption, and waste. Sustainable materials management can move us forward with a more diverse and resilient circular economy based on local production and consumption while investing in regenerative industries that reduce Kauai's reliance on imported foods, goods, and services. Central to this is a materials recovery facility and the ability to separate valuable materials in our waste stream. Zero waste principles and sustainable materials management work to reframe the traditional process of waste management by focusing on waste prevention while envisioning waste as potentially useful materials. Our ability to extract resources from our waste stream is greatly increased by having a centralized waste processing and recycling center. A materials recovery facility will enable the county solid waste program to increase diversion rates of recyclable and compostable materials. A key element in sustainable materials management to decrease greenhouse gases is dealing with organic matter, primarily the growing volume of food waste, green waste, and paper products that end up in our landfill and generate methane gas. Composting helps mitigate climate crisis by reducing methane gas in our landfill, by sequestering carbon in our local soils, and helps rebuild depleted soils. Removing organic material from our waste stream is an easy step to take. Composting, whether in the backyard or on the farm, will help our soils regenerate while reducing greenhouse gases and sequestering carbon. The rate of consumption of natural resources by consumer-driven society has been a major factor in the growing impact of climate change. Our addiction to more stuff is unsustainable, and our disposable lifestyle is in badly need of transformation. Adopting a zero waste management strategy locally and individually practicing conscious consumption are some ways our communities can address our impacts on the planet. This graph shows that over the past century, global material consumption and carbon emissions have increased exponentially and in tandem. And sadly, Kauai's landfill in Keikaha has only 7 years of projected capacity remaining. The cost of a new landfill is estimated at $150 to $175 million. We must increase waste diversion and improve source separation of food waste, green waste, and recyclables. Our landfill should be the last option. And back to you, Alana.
All right, so with that, I just want to leave everyone with a few lifestyle changes that we all could be making to help the earth, like buying local, reducing packaging, buying durable goods, buying recycled, reusing and repair, reducing food waste and composting, transitioning towards a plant-based diet, or at least trying to eat more plant-based, rethinking your consumption, and if you really don't need it, then don't buy it. So it's just as important as doing our own lifestyle changes is changing the system. So with that, I would like to ask you candidates, starting with Jade Wiley Ali-Batad, identify specific ways the County of Kauai can reduce its own contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, and identify mandated or incentivized approaches for local businesses, industries, residents, and visitors to reduce theirs as well. So we'll start with you, Jade Wiley Ali-Batad.
I hope to propose a countywide policy to make greenhouse gas emissions part of every discussion at the county level. When we make decisions about road construction and solid waste planning, are we considering the climate impacts? Also, when we build affordable housing, does climate come into conversation? I don't know, it should. A poorly designed structure may be hot, and it may encourage us to use air conditioning and more multiple fans. Design it right from the start, and the climate benefits will flow for years. Build smart, Ben says. The county can reduce its contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions by making it part of every single decision we make at the front end. When the county prepares a budget, let's look at the climate impacts for all of our projects. If the county proposes a parking lot, we should build shade trees. That would decrease the impacts. Some of this is simple. We learned during the pandemic and that many times consuming meetings can be handled electronically. Nobody needs to drive long distances, wasting time and fuel, and nobody needed to fly. There were many meetings that are best held in person, perhaps, but we found that we can do many of those meetings virtually and save in our impacts. I also think that not only do we save on travel fuel if we're not traveling and flying, but we also think of the productivity gains. If you aren't gone all day from work, you have more time to be efficient at work. I also think that if you just make climate impacts part of every single conversation, then we will improve the outcomes. You can also incentivize others. There are lots of social science evidence that our credibility is increased if we are actually walking the talk. If we are personally doing the kinds of actions that we're asking others to adopt. I think there's many things we can do, but it all begins with starting at our county level and talking about it. Thank you.
All right, and next up we have Wally Nishimura.
So, the big question, everything we want to do again, how are we going to pay for it? So to follow up on my last answer, specifically when tourism comes back, and we need it to come back because we're going to charge them when they come back, but we need to focus on what we're going to charge them on. I support Mayor Kaua'i and his parking fee. I support his beach user fee. I supported a toll road when I ran for election in 2018 for council. That is where we'll get some generated funds to start to support our initiatives to reduce our greenhouse gases as an island. What are we going to do with that money? Well, I'd like to see the county of Kauai go completely solar, like I said. You know, all of our offices, our air conditioning, our vehicles, the TVs, the computers, all of that. If we are 100% sustainable as a county government, I think it'd be big, and I think we can do it. California recently passed something where they said all cars by 2045, something like that, I believe, will have to be electric that's sold. So we can do that. We can do that now too for our county government to set the best possible example. We have to continue to work with the solar companies and incentivize them so they can make it affordable for everybody to buy it. Right now, I can't buy solar panels for my house. They have financing, but we have to make sure that the technology is available for everybody to purchase, and education is key. When people are coming on the airplanes, we're not at the rental cars. We want to educate them on what they do. They have safety videos for the ocean. We can have videos on impacts and how to reduce their impacts while they're here. when you go to the beach, pick up one bag of trash on your way out. When you go to our beach parks or our trails, do the same thing. We educate them.
All right, thank you. Next we have Kipukai Kuli'i.
Aloha, thank you. In 2013, our county adopted a climate action plan. That plan had 8 goals. The quote opening the plan says, "We live in a carbon-constrained world, and 21st century managers have a carbon kuleana. What gets measured gets managed." So our county has been measuring our carbon footprint. Our county needs to lead the way and continue leading the way and promote carbon kuleana with businesses and residences. But the top 2 goals in the plan is save energy, reduce the overall county electricity use from 2012 levels 30% by 2023. And goal 2, reduce county fossil fuel transportation energy use by 50% by 2023, also starting with 2012 levels. So we need to ask our green team with the county, how are we doing? What worked? What didn't work? What can we do better? The climate action goal overall is 80% reduction of carbon emissions from county operations by 2023. The county has been working to do a county fleet greening policy where we're requiring electric vehicles for all non-first responder vehicles. Maybe we can get to the point where we do first responder vehicles as well. As far as incentivizing, there's a electric vehicle charger incentive program that is on hold now that's partnering with the county, KIUC, Ulupono, and the Kauai Economic Development Board. We need to get that going to provide incentives for businesses to install EV charging stations. For residents, we do the compost bins now. Maybe we should also be doing some rain catchment barrels, the same kind of program where people come in, learn about what can be done with rain catchment barrels, and then they get a rain catchment barrel. With grant funds, we could probably provide them to our citizens. Different education, a lot of different education help.
Well, I guess that was it. Next up, we have Errol Kaneshiro.
Yeah, so the county's made great efforts to reduce their contribution to greenhouse gases. Our energy sustainability coordinator, Ben Sullivan's done extensive studies and taken action on our own energy consumption, the county's own energy consumption, and ways to reduce it. And we've been transitioning our county vehicle fleet actually towards an electric vehicle fleet with charging capacity. And we've also done an excellent job of finding federal money, such as the Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant, also known as the TIGER Grant. I was on the council at that time and supported it. It brought in $13 million of federal money, in which the county matched it with $2 million in bond funds for a total of $15 million. And, you know, we don't get many opportunities for that type of a match, and that grant was highly competitive. I had council members on the Big Island tell me, you know, they were going really hard for that grant and we got it. But again, you know, this grant, among other things, provided improvements to our bus stops, safer walking and biking with crosswalks and bike lanes, and further encouraging alternative means of transportation other than a vehicle in the Lihue town core area. You mentioned the general excise tax, passing the general excise tax, which I supported, provided a means to improve and expand our bus system, giving our residents a viable option for alternative transportation and reduce our dependence on vehicles. And then again, finally, as I mentioned in our first question, by focusing our land use patterns on infill development and easing up our restrictions for residential, commercial, and mixed use structures in our town cores, or promoting a land use pattern that can in fact reduce our carbon footprint.
All right, thank you. Up next, we have Ed Justice.
Hello. So the question is, it's 2 questions, yeah? So it's about what the county can do regarding reducing its greenhouse gases. And Errol Kaneshiro talked about the fact that the county is transitioning its fleet from gas-powered or hybrid vehicles to electric vehicles. I think that's a fantastic thing. I totally support that. And I believe it'd be great also for any future buildings that the county makes, or even affordable housing developments, and this may already be in the language, but I still totally support it, is that adding more photovoltaic or solar onto the existing county buildings or any new buildings that the county is involved with. When it comes to private individuals, you know, a lot of folks aren't able to purchase an electric car. They're not able to purchase photovoltaic or solar. And, you know, it's a struggle just to pay rent. So I can completely understand why some folks aren't able to make that transition. So perhaps it'd be nice to incentivize the county to be able to go, hey, maybe this is going to be really expensive, but the idea is the county could say, hey, how about we put down your deposit on buying an electric car? Or how about we put down a deposit so you can get photovoltaic? Now, I know the budget is going to be super tight coming up in the next couple of years, but if we write a program essentially that can do those things, when the budget does expand, then at least we'd be able to have the ability to offer that incentive to folks. And instead of, you know, I'm not really in favor of penalizing folks and trying to force them to transition. I'd like to find some way to make it easy for private individuals and businesses to make that shift.
Thank you. Next we have Richard Fukushima.
GHG emission, greenhouse gas. The County of Kauai inventory of greenhouse gas emissions was established as part of the county's commitment to mitigate GHG emission and develop a comprehensive climate action plan, CAP. The primary source of GHG emission in the county are stationary fuel and electrical energy use, residential, commercial, and industrial buildings, on-road, off-road, marine, and air transportation that occur within the county limits or transits between Kauai and domestic destinations, wastewater treatment and solid waste management, and agriculture, forestry, and other land use. The county GHG inventory is developed under the Global Protocol for community-scale greenhouse gas emission inventories and estimates GHG emission that occur in the county's jurisdiction encompassing the entire island of Kauai and Niihau. The Kauai's community-wide inventory is designed to be updated and improved on a periodic basis as the new techniques and data becomes available. The county's community-wide GHG emissions for 2015 were 968,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, down from 13.5% from 2005. Emissions from transportation, primarily jet fuel emissions, make up the largest source of GHG emissions. The carbon cycle constantly cycles through 5 pools of planet Earth. Light energy coming in from sun functions as the fuel for the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is a critical natural process that moves carbon through our atmosphere, biosphere, pedosphere, lithosphere, and oceans.
All right, mahalo. Luke Evslin.
Thanks, Alana. Yeah, most of the guidance for local governments focuses on 4 areas that local government has control over, right? That's renewable energy for electricity sector, transportation emissions, emissions from solid waste, and emissions from buildings through increased energy efficiency. So I'll try and run through all of those real quick. As far as renewable energy goes, we actually don't have much authority over KUC, but that's okay because they're doing an amazing job anyway, right? They're at 60% renewable. They'll be at 80% by 2023. When it comes to emissions from transportation, that's actually our largest source of emissions now. It surpassed electricity in 2016. And as emissions from electricity kind of fall off a cliff, emissions from transportation continue to go up every year. And a major component of that is because of our land use patterns. We're driving more and more every year because we're building homes further and further away from jobs. So 2 components to try and reduce transportation emissions. Number 1 is to ensure that we're building homes close to jobs. Right, the goal has to be that we can allow anybody who chooses to find an affordable home close to work. That's clearly our kuleana at council through the zoning code. I think we've made a lot of great progress on that over the last 2 years. The other part of transportation emissions obviously is electrification. Electric vehicles are forecast to get cheaper than their fossil fuel counterparts by 2023 to 2025. Right, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, right, through our building codes, energy codes, and on county infrastructure. The last two I'll run through quick is solid waste emissions. 10% of our waste is food waste. As Jimmy said well, that goes into our landfill, turns into methane. We need to ensure that we are composting that. That'll ultimately save restaurants money by not having to send it, pay tipping fees to the landfill, save all of us money in extending the life of the landfill and create a viable byproduct. Last would be energy use in buildings. We need to fully implement our energy codes. Amortized over the cost of a mortgage, increase building efficiency leads to huge savings over the life of a building, right? So we need to ensure that that's happening.
All right, mahalo Luke, and Billy DaCosta is next.
Awesome. Kind of hard to follow Luke. Luke, you speak very well and you have great ideas, and I'm all behind you guys with what's handing out to us right now. But what puzzles me a little bit is, you know, we talk about our electric vehicles. Most families on Kauai cannot afford an electrical vehicle. I'm glad the county is moving towards that, and I'd like to see the county fleet eventually be 100% electric vehicles. But how about our electrical technicians? Or even looking at who's going to be repairing these vehicles and who's going to be slated to make sure that the repairs are done. And what happens to these vehicles when they no longer can run? You know, where does all the batteries go into our landfill? I spoke about how to turn organic plant matter and plant-based matter, animal matter, back into soil organic matters, and have that back into our landfill and give back to the depleted agricultural soils that happened in the plantation era. And if you can create these farming communities that people can live on the farm, on state lands, that long-term lease, on private lands, that we allow building of homes on there on an eco-friendly system where we're off the grid and it's environmental friendly. Like I said before, we have that tertiary system that we can put portable water out of the septic system into our gardens. It can be done. People can live and work on their farms. If they need to go to a 9-to-5 job, they can use their vehicle. I believe the bigger picture, and we spoke about global warming here, and it's a big concern. But you guys know it's a world decision. I really would like to see us focus on 3 things right now: diversify our economy, food security, and have resiliency with our county programs to help our children. Nobody talks about our drug treatment center being up and running. Our children are suffering. We need to get programs where we can have our kids be highly skilled to enter into these programs, like farming, like fixing electric cars, like building prefab homes. We got to think out of the box. Global warming is only one. Thank you.
Mahalo, Billy. Next up, we have Mike Danduran.
There, okay, I just want to make sure I was on. Yes, so, you know, in the general plan, emissions, it says emissions from imported consumer goods account for 2 times the amount of greenhouse gas produced by any other source in any other sector. And a majority of Kauai's greenhouse gases are a result of our individual choices, both residents and businesses. You know, so, you know, we can make all the plans at county level, but a lot of it comes down to our choices as citizens, as residents of Kauai. And I'm going to give you an example. I used this last night, the papaya story, right? This papaya was picked in Mexico. It traveled 3,500 miles to get here, and it's at the store. And this papaya was picked in Molowa a couple of days ago. It was handed to me by the farmer, and it traveled 10 miles, probably 5 miles. So Kauai, the question is, which papaya should we be buying? This is here on Kauai, but this one is too. This one is at your big box store that starts with a C, or unethical farmer's market, so be careful. This one was picked from a farmer in Molowa. Kauai, if we choose this papaya, then we are building our own economy. We are building a sustainable economy. If we choose this papaya, we're not helping anything. We're actually working against our own people. So if you buy local, you're supporting yourselves, and that's really the bottom line. So we must change our habits. The key is changing our habits. We just got to change the way we do things. Buy less, use less, recycle, compost. We must be part of the solution. We must think about things before we buy. Your power is in the dollar that you use and where you spend it. So next time you go out shopping, think about where you're going to spend it, you know, and really think about it. Think about who's going to get it. How is it going to support the island? And then that way, I think that we're able to at least start the
All right, thanks so much, Mike. Up next, we'd love to hear from Mason Chalk.
Aloha, mahalo. I'm going to pivot from where Councilmember Evslin left off and want to focus on 4 additional areas. And they all kind of lead towards public-private partnerships, or the ability for us to look for private-public partnerships. The first is solid waste and sewer. I'll put them in the 2 area of composting ability, and we're really on the edge and close to being able to do that composting with our sewer program. So how does that translate to the landfill? We need to increase our ability to compost, right? And that means we have to increase our or perhaps mandate what we don't put into the landfill. That is, as Lucas said, our food, which is 10% of it, but also our commercial and demolition. So I'm looking at how it is we can increase some of those bans moving forward. Of course, the county has already taken on the plastic bag ban, the polystyrene single-use plastics is already on its way. That's something we have to look at it. We also can mine our landfill, and we have companies that can assist us with that. The MRF that we talked about that I've heard tonight. You know what? It's cost too much for us, so let's partner with someone. Let's start somewhere and build upon it. I think that's something feasible. Transportation is the second area. I think we got to build upon the regional shuttles, and that goes hand in hand with some of our visitor parking fees. All right, let's incentivize using the public transportation and increase our hours and our routes. We already are transitioning to electric buses. And then the third part is really the educational campaign. You know, I think what we talk about so much is the need for changing mindsets and daily behaviors. And that comes from us enlisting what we have, which is also already the Aloha Plus Challenge. We have our own dashboard that we can monitor on a daily basis, the KauaiChallenge.org. Let's enlist that, because that's really where we can make a difference. And then lastly, I had brought up sort of the credit rating risk that we're exposed to. And there are sources. Someone asked, how do we fund this? Well, not only with public-private partnerships, but there are federal grants, the National Climate Bank, the FEMA BRIC program. We have general obligation funds if we really need to get there. And then also the state is talking about carbon pricing programs.
All right, mahalo, Mason. Up next, we have Felicia Cowden.
Mahalo. It is Felicia Cowden, and you know, my background is in private business, and so I have a lot of respect for the innovative capacity of business and the individual, and my background has me where I want to incentivize rather than to mandate. So to me, that's where I would begin, is trying to almost have a competitive plan across the county's businesses and people. We'd set goals of where we want to do our carbon drop. And I think that businesses, they know their own business. If we tell them what they need to do, they might not be near as effective as if we let them make their own choice. And I think with, even at the family level, something I've talked about a lot is, like at my house, I have robust neighborhood food production. And the impact of that for people who can do that, it drops your garbage back by maybe 3/4, because you don't have all the plastic, you don't have all the coverings of it, you don't have to drive somewhere to go do it. When you start to plant trees, somebody asked earlier about the water, once the trees are there, you don't need to water anymore. It brings the water in. It changes the ecosystem right in your yard. So, and then you don't have to drive to the grocery store. There are so many ways as individuals we can make small steps that are right in alignment with what our nature is. And so I think that from different parts of the county, each one of them also can make those choices. And when we talk about maybe not traveling, I know that I've really missed the opportunity to be face-to-face interacting with different groups. It's not quite the same to Zoom. It really isn't. So we would be looking at essentially a carbon budget that we would have. And so maybe we decide, okay, we're going to go for one conference, but then there's other ways that you're going to make choices to limit.
Hello, Felicia. Up next, Bernard Carvalho Jr.
Transportation, and we kind of went through everything, electric vehicles, the shuttles. I think we talked about that. I know on the North Shore, following the devastating storm that happened there, we said the only way in the future you're going to travel down to the North Shore is via shuttle. And how do we manage that? What kind of resources? It's not just the county, it's the business sector, it's the community, everybody together are looking at a way to traverse that part of our island. So I think looking at hubs like that is a big part of whether it be North Shore, East Side, Kauai area, where you get on the shuttle. And once we open the doors to more visitors, as people want to visit our island and really get everybody back to work. But more importantly, how do we travel our island responsibly? And I think that kind of idea, we talked about that earlier. The development of the town core development is a big part right now for me too, so I totally support that. I know we've done things kind of overall, but if we can really work to keep people close to the workplace, that's a big, and that was said numerous times as well. But I think looking at that footprint to get people out of their cars, being able to walk and bike, we have many examples of that already as we transforming our downtown core into the opportunities for more people to get to work in a different way. And I think even living there with town core idea. So with transportation, kind of like looking at the shuttle service part, dealing with our people who live here, of course, and having them be able to have opportunities to live where they work. And then at the same time, having opportunities to jump on the shuttle and go where they need to go. So I think overall, there's a big picture here, but more importantly, working closely with all the different organizations and within our county government. We have a lot of resources, and I've been involved in all of it, so I know what it takes to get there. But my bottom line is, how do we get people moving on our island in a very safe way, but a more efficient and sustainable way?
All right, mahalo. And just to repeat the question, identify specific ways the County of Kauai can reduce its own contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, and identify mandated or incentivized approaches for local businesses, industries, residents, and visitors to reduce theirs as well. Addison Bulosan, your last candidate. Love to hear from you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with us into this forum. I hope you guys are having a wonderful time. Don't forget to stretch. Yes, that's right. The resident chiropractor is telling you to make sure you take care of your spine and your health, because that is a big part of how we take care of the island. Well, guess what? The same answer to all of the questions is that we need to implement zero waste policies within the county and implement zero waste policies within the businesses. And the nonprofits and the events, guess what? In everything. And the presentation told you exactly why. And so the zero waste policies is something that we can adopt right now. It's a solution right now. It's not something that we got to wait for. We've been using the zero waste platform for a while now through the Rice Street Business Association, as we planned and organized the Rice Street Block Party, where we had over 5,000 people along Rice Street. And guess what? We did the zero waste policy. We made sure that everything was compostable. We walked away from that event with 5,000 people with 3 bags of trash. 3 bags of trash with 5,000 people on Rice Street, 10 plus food trucks, every single awesome experience you can have as a community. So it can be done. And if we can implement that across the county and then help incentivize our local businesses to utilize zero waste policies, it is something that we can move on right now. And to be super honest, as a business, I know I'm going to get this question later, I can implement these things right now. The last couple of things was, electrifying our driving fleet that was already mentioned, increase multimodal transportation, and then disincentivizing business practices that contribute to climate crisis. But the one biggest single thing that we got to do right now also is developing town core centers so that we can make sure that we can continue to support our local businesses and our local people. Thank you.
Mahalo.
All right, and now we're going to start with the individual questions. Luke Evslin, you're the first for this. We have 2 minutes for the response. Green buildings can reduce per person emissions by over 50%. Luke, can you explain what the general plan recommends and what legislation you are ready to advocate pertaining to green building?
So I'm almost certain that the general plan makes a recommendation to fully implement the international energy codes. The former council did adopt them partially. There were some components of the energy codes that got amended out. I wasn't there at the time, so I hope I'm not misspeaking here, but I believe some of the parts that got amended out was the higher grade of insulation, I believe, for roofs, rough-in for ceiling fans in homes, and then roughing in for electric car chargers in garages. And rough-in means you're putting in the conduit. When you do the building, you don't actually have to install it. And the rationale for those is that, you know, if you rough it in while you're building it, right, it might cost you 150 extra bucks to rough in some conduit while you're constructing a building. If you try and do it after the fact, right, to put a fan in, if there's no box there, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to rip your drywall off. And oftentimes it forces people to put, you know, a window AC or something on their house, right, and huge amounts of energy costs going forward. So that's the importance of energy codes, is do it up front, right, when it's, again, amortized over the cost of a mortgage. It's almost nothing, right? It's a negligible difference, huge savings as you go forward. The reason to, you know, there's a lot of criticism around the roughing in, you know, conduit for an electric car charger in a garage. Why are you going to need this? But the reason is equity, right? If we're looking at electric cars being cheaper than their fossil fuel counterparts in the next 5 years, and then people are buying homes that don't have, you know, aren't sort of EV ready, then again, you're sort of locking them out of the market because they won't be able to put a charger in to make that transition. And again, it's a negligible upfront cost. So I personally support, you know, fully implementing the energy codes. Maybe it's something that we could do next term. I apologize to any former council members if I misspoke for any of the parts that were amended.
All right, mahalo. And Felicia Cowden, this next question is for you. Plastic is 99% fossil fuel. It emits greenhouse gases, lasts forever, but can only be repurposed once. You supported the bill that just passed Council 42 to ban polystyrene starting in 2022. Were you satisfied with the bill, and is there more you propose doing as a council person to further deal with the plastic problem on Kauai?
Well, thank you for asking. I think that we need to move away from plastics. What I have seen, I mentioned this in council today, is that I did have the opportunity to go to an international conference a year ago, and what I saw there is that fast food still came in a glass bowl, still had a fork, and you just ate it fast. And they had a way of setting up so many of the same modern facilities that we have, but you just got really quickly out of the habit of creating any of the garbage. And I think it's just a matter of learning to change the behavior, a little bit like learning to wear a seatbelt seemed impossible at first, and then it just became second nature. Where we need to partner in an idea with things like that is with the Department of Health. I believe that companies like Costco, these big box stores that are shipping a lot of product, they will lead in some ways. Like Costco does not sell any more styrofoam types of packaging for to put home stuff in, or to create plates and things like that. We have to work with these big companies to get them away from the plastic. And that is a bit of a national choice. Mostly, as I say, as we start being locally with our own food, then you don't have to get the bags. You don't have to get any of that. I use a little bar of soap for my hair that I bought from somebody. I think her business is called Kaelia. So when we do locally based products, we're not going to need all the packaging. I think that's a big way of moving into it. That bill didn't leave quite enough room, and we didn't get a good option at that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Felicia. Next question is to Wally Nishimura. Wally, several county studies and their consultants on waste management have advised against a waste-to-energy facility for Kauai on an economic basis. Waste to energy discourages recycling and reusing and recovering materials as it demands large quantities to incinerate. Wally, in the first forum, you spoke up as an advocate for incineration. Have you reconsidered your support of waste to energy given the advice and expertise of specialists in solid waste?
I wouldn't say I've completely reconsidered my position. You know, when we talk about zero waste, it's great. I'm glad it works. How are we going to get people, local people who work 2 or 3 jobs just to survive here to do that? They're not worried about organizing their trash and their rubbish. They're worried about sleeping for 2 hours before driving to their next job. Curbside recycling on Maui was a great idea. They had like a pilot program. They stopped it in July because it cost too much money. So I want to be as sustainable and care for this land as much as possible as the blood and the cocoa flowing through my veins from my ancestors as a native Hawaiian. But I want to be rooted in reality for what we do and how it affects our local people.
Wally, what would you recommend? Any suggestions in regards to moving in this direction for our waste and to be able to have local families participate?
Well, I'd like to see how we can make it easy and convenient for people who are in that position, for people right now who are trying to get jobs, who are counting pennies, who are standing in line at to get food at some of the distribution centers. You know, the stuff that the packaging at the distribution centers for food is not necessarily going to be recyclable. You know, it's food that they want to eat in whatever packaging it comes in. They're not worried about how they're going to recycle this. They're worried about how they're going to feed their family right now.
Thanks, Wally.
All right, and this last question is for Bernard Carvalho. During your time as mayor, a site selection for a materials recovery facility, or MRF, was made and money appropriated for a plan, but it did not get built under your leadership. A MRF is a necessary component of zero waste strategy to help us divert 70% or more of the waste from our landfill. We've been warned for many years that our landfill is at a critical point. Will you, as a council member, follow the direction of the general plan in pursuit of the zero waste strategy and help see that a MRF is finally built?
Trying to ensure that we do it the right way. And I remember when I first got into office, looking at a location where we can actually do, because eventually the current landfill was going to expire, and we had to really move forward. And it was actually, the first location was over at the Kauai Coffee, and that was part of the plan. I mean, they already had designated that, but the bigger picture is, for me, yes, I support that. I think we got to move in that direction with the MRF that can separate and make sure that we move and support all the efforts. I know that we've done a lot of discussions. We've laid out a whole master plan on the location of where we'll be managing our waste, but at the same time, looking at other options and opportunities. And for me, as a council member, I've looked at many different options right now as we speak, and I think the MRF idea, of course, needs the support to move forward.
All right. Well, mahalo. We definitely hope that comes to fruition. So thank you, everybody. Now, I just want to mention that the general plan underlines individual action, and the county's Aloha Plus Challenge provides a tool for individuals and families and communities to work together to make positive changes in their lives that help our environment. The behavior and actions of individuals are critical to making these shifts happen. Like most U.S. residents, the people on Kauai emit more than double per capita the world average greenhouse gas emissions per year. It's everyone's kuleana to look at ways they can reduce their own personal carbon footprint, in keeping with the spirit of Kauai Kako, as the general plan is named. And Jimmy will take the final question.
And so we have 30 seconds to answer this final question. We're going to go in the rapid fire round, if you will. The question is, what are you doing personally to reduce yours or your family's carbon footprint? Are there any organizations or efforts that you've been involved in that address environmental protection, conservation, or advocacy? And we're going to start with Felicia, and she'll be followed by Mike Danduran.
As I said, I have a yard in here that I live in. I have solar power, solar water. I have, especially with this COVID, probably reduced my outside exposure by about 90% of what I'm going to. Haven't gotten on a plane since, maybe almost a year. My garbage is way down. Okay, is that my end? Did I hear? Okay, thank you. Did it end me? Okay. Anyway, I work on it daily. And my car gets about 38 miles to the gallon. I have a 7-year-old car.
Thanks, Felicia. Next person is Mike Danduran.
Hi, aloha. Well, I'm glad you asked this question because we were giving away a lot of food because we had grant money and there was no sustainable way of keeping that going. So me and a group of very talented people put together a food hub, and we've been operating for about a week now. And we're providing food for people through this organization, and it's sustainable because it's not free. We ask them to pay, but it is part of a sustainable business. So I don't know if that cut it off or not, but support the food hubs, please.
Thanks, Mike. Billy DaCosta, you're next, followed by Luke Evslin.
Our personal footprint is that me and my family, my Ohana, my Hanai family all over Kauai, we harvest grass-fed beef. We share our local steaks and hamburger. Nobody brings styrofoam trays to pick it up. They come with their own iron pans that they wash. We also have a agricultural farm on our 10 acres. We have avocados, oranges, lemons. We don't go to Costco and buy those fruits in those large plastic containers that end up in our landfill. We do our plant and animal recycling. And yeah, we're ready to do it. Billy DaCosta is here for you guys this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. Luke Evelyn, you're next.
Thanks, Jimmy. In an effort to eliminate my carbon footprint, I built an off-grid home in 2011. We lived in it for 7 years. Pretty quickly, though, realized that my carbon footprint had probably gone up. We were living in the boonies, so I was driving to and from work far distances, and then realized that an isolated off-grid system is incredibly inefficient compared to the island-wide efficiencies of KIUC. So I moved to an old home close to where I work, probably have a smaller carbon footprint now, realized that we need sort of a systems-based community-wide approach here, and that's why I ran for office 2 years ago, and I'm doing so again.
Thanks, Luke. Richard Fukushima, you're next, followed by Ed Justice.
We're not doing any recycling. We're just doing recycling right now, and I haven't done any joined any organizations yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Ed Justice, followed by Errol Kaneshiro.
So you may or may not know, but I'm the owner and operator of Talk Story Bookstore, which is Kauai's only bookstore, and I started it in 2004. And in that 16 years in business, I have literally saved millions of books from ending up in the landfill. So that's my contribution to helping the environment. So we get all kinds of cool stuff that people bring in, and it finds a new home, so you don't have to make new things. You can come discover the old cool stuff.
Thanks, Ed. Errol Kaneshiro, you're next, followed by Kipukai Kuali'i.
I'm proud to have worked on and brought 2 major solar energy projects to Kauai. One, the 50-acre KIUC solar farm in Koloa, which was 12 megawatts. 2, the Tesla solar farm in Kapaya, which was 13 megawatts. Our family has a 1-acre solar farm in Lauai producing 300 kilowatts of energy to the KIUC grid. Personally, I compost with our county-provided compost bin. I support our local farmers and ranchers, purchase produce from farmers and farmers markets and local farmers. And I have recycle bins at my house for aluminum, glass, and plastic, and also recycle our cardboard.
Thanks, Errol. Kipu Kai, followed by Wally Nishimura.
I compost, recycle, carpool, buy local, eat local, reuse. I take my water flask with me everywhere I go. You know, one more thing on transportation. A few months ago in a tough budget cycle, I got a bus pass discount program funded so that we can enable our local nonprofits to provide more bus passes to more of their financially challenged clients. I know I need to do more personally. I'm learning more and I'm doing.
Thanks, Kipu Kai. We're going to be having Wally Nishimura answer the next question, followed by Jade Ali Batad.
I am happily married with 4 children. I can't afford a 3-year-old Tesla vehicle right now. I drive a car. When I go to work at KVMH from Monohola, I get 30 miles per gallon. We have a family SUV that fits all of us. We recycle everything we can. I teach my children to take care of this land, to value it. Of course, I'm running for office to be part of the change. This is my second campaign. I'm 29 years old. I'm here to make a difference for my children in the future. VoteWallyNishimura.com. I humbly ask for your vote. I'll bring honor, respect, and integrity back to government.
Muting.
Thank you, Wally. Jade Ali Batad, you're next, followed by Addison Bulasan.
Aloha, I'm Jade Ali Batad. My husband is Poki Batad. He has the green thumb. He has a beautiful la'au plant garden that he's growing, and this week alone 4 people have come for his beautiful chili peppers. He is an amazing green thumb. We have recyclable containers outside. We do everything we can to make our footprint less, and I literally am walking this entire island. Took my car to be serviced today and walked the entire island and went to the bank and paid all my bills. And so I'm doing my part. Mahalo.
Thanks, Jade. We're going to be Addison Bulasan, followed by Bernard Carvalho Jr.
Hello, Kako. I humbly ask for one of your 7 votes this council. What we're doing at the specific chiropractic centers, my office, and Tasting Kauai, we've already signed up with the Kauai Plus Challenge when they rolled that out 2 years ago. We've been committed to it and following it ever since. Tasting Kauai's have been supporting local ag from the beginning of its inception since 2013. The specific compost, the Tasting Kauai compost, and personally, I walk as much as possible throughout the entire Rice Street because I'm the Rice Street Business Association president. And I'm all about this because this is something that we got to do right now, and I'm super excited to add more things to my plate.
Thank you, Addison. Bernard Carvalho Jr., you're next, and Mason Chalk, you will be our last.
And I also talked to them about reduce, reuse, recycle, but we're also outside riding bike and walking the path and keeping them healthy and strong and just being with my grandchildren and teaching them, you know, what it is to be sustainable and riding our bikes together. All of that ties into more of a family experience. So I know they're going to always remember Papa. Mahalo.
Thank you, Bernard. Mason, you're our last, if you will, respondent to this question. Thank you.
Aloha. I compost, practice 3 Rs, eat it and support local. I hunt and fish, lead Aloha Aina and agricultural efforts like Malama Huli'ia, Waipa, and many others. I help educate our youth and build leaders with Leadership Kauai. I garden and plant natives, walk more, ride share more, care for our reefs, and walk and use my bike more nowadays. So love everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mason. And Alana is going to take us out with a couple of slides and a big mahalo.
Yes, mahalo everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. So the last 5 of our co-sponsors, which included the Surfrider Foundation of Kauai, the Community Coalition for Kauai, the Kauai Women's Caucus, and the Kauai Climate Action Coalition are dun, 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 Zero Waste Kauai. Oh,
share your screen.
One moment. Technology is in my way right now, but it's all good. Yeah, so the last sponsors, can you see my screen? Mm-hmm. Cool. Our last sponsors are Zero Waste Kauai, team working hard behind the scenes towards creating a more sustainable Kauai. And then we meet every second Tuesday of the month. And you can join our mailing list at zerowastekauai.net or find us on Facebook or Instagram at Zero Waste Kauai. We also have KKCR, Kauai Community Radio. It's Kauai's independent, non-commercial, listener-supported community radio station. We're actually broadcasting live right now. So aloha to all our listeners. And this will also be broadcasted. There will be rebroadcast on the Community Coalition of Kauai Facebook page at Community Coalition Kauai. It'll also be on their website at communitycoalitionkauai.org/video. It'll also be on their YouTube channel and on KKCR's Candidate Voices page. The link is right there at kkcr.org. And we're also broadcasting on Huike. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate everybody joining, taking the time to educate yourself on the climate crisis and to learn more about the candidates so that you can make a more informed decision when we vote for who will be the best leaders for us during this time. So remember to encourage your friends and family to watch the replay, and everybody vote. Very important. So mahalo, everybody. Take care.